Welcome back, everyone. This is Griot of the Diaspora, and I am your host, Nakaira G. And today's episode is going to be a West Africa update. We're basically going to get into some updates and some new things that have been going on over in West Africa. Like I said in my last episode, I will be doing as many West Africa updates as I can, include the updates with Burkina Faso and things that are going on with the Sahel states versus ECOWAS. So definitely stay tuned in, subscribe, like, comment. Let's have a conversation. In my videos, I'm going to be asking questions, and I really do want people to sound off in the comment section because I think that some of these questions can't just be answered on the video, right? So let's get into it. Real quick, y'all, make sure you download my new ebook. It is a travel planner and journal. I made this about a year and a half ago, and it's really, really cool. There are 10 different entries. So as you are on your travel journeys, make sure you download this ebook. It's only $10, and you can get it on my website today at nakedgoldonline.com. You can download it, you can print it, whatever works for you. Make sure you cop that today. So we're going to talk about a couple of updates. So if you've been watching my videos, you've seen the recent accomplishments of Burkina Faso, and you've seen Captain Ibrahim Traore and his speeches that he has been giving in the past couple weeks. When he came to Ghana, he gave a speech, and it was very powerful. We have some videos where it's transcribed into English.
Because Burkina Faso will never give up. Burkina Faso will never give up. Burkina Faso will fight. We are a proud people, fighters, warriors, and dignified, and we will continue in this direction. All those who dream of seeing Burkina Faso on their knees to hope to bring us back to slavery must understand that they have failed. The army will go where it must go to secure our wealth. Since this is what it is about, we are victims of our wealth. It is wealth that the imperialists want at all costs to take back and maintain our slavery.
And I know that we have been giving Burkina Faso so much love over here, but when we want to talk about it and when there are things that are happening, I'm going to make sure to share it. So let's probably just start off a little bit with Burkina Faso, and then we're going to talk about some other countries. So if you have not seen all of what's going on in West African news, so recently with Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traore, he has been doing a lot of different things. He has kicked out the French military. He has taken away the colonial white wigs in the court sector. And he has done a few other things that has targeted France in particular. He's also, I believe, stopped Air France from going to their country. And so in response, France's Prime Minister Macron, he gave his statement.
Nous avions une relation sécuritaire. Elle était de deux natures en vérité. Il y a une partie, c'était notre engagement contre le terrorisme depuis 2013. On avait raison. Je crois qu'on a oublié de nous dire merci. C'est pas grave, ça viendra avec le temps. L'ingratitude, je suis bien placé pour le savoir, c'est une maladie non transmissible à l'homme. Mais je le dis pour tous les gouvernants africains qui n'ont pas eu le courage vis-à-vis de leurs opinions publiques de le porter, aucun d'entre eux ne serait aujourd'hui avec un pays souverain si l'armée française ne s'était pas déployée dans cette région. Et j'ai une pensée émue pour nos soldats qui parfois ont donné leur vie et pendant des années se sont battus. Nous avons bien fait. On est parti parce qu'il y a eu des coups d'État, parce qu'on était là à la demande d'États souverains qui avaient demandé à la France de venir. À partir du moment où il y a eu des coups d'État, où les gens ont dit « notre priorité, c'est plus la lutte contre le terrorisme, c'est ceci ou cela qu'importe », la France n'y avait plus sa place, parce que nous ne sommes pas les supplétifs de putschistes. Donc on est parti. Nous avions une relation...
And so you see, President Macron obviously seems to be upset. It's an easy thing to be upset about because the way that you build your country's wealth is dependent on African countries that are not receiving any of that wealth that is going to outside of the continent. And so Macron basically said that he feels that, these African countries are ungrateful and they weren't appreciative of the work that France did do and the protection that France provided, i.e. having their militaries base stationed in the countries. And so Captain Ibrahim Traore, he continues to do the work. And so he does respond back to Macron.
Il faut que ces soi-disant démocrates le comprennent.
It is important that these so-called Democrats understand this.
Milliers de Nigériens
When thousands of Nigerians die in hospital beds
par manque d'électricité,
due to lack of electricity or lack of medication, it is a crime.
ils sont responsables.
They are responsible for these sanctions. They are responsible for these deaths.
La même
The same thing happens in Mali.
avec le Burkina, nous avons des
With Burkina, we have indirect sanctions because people have to understand.
Lorsqu'ils prennent leurs consignes,
When they take their orders from the other side, they come and do everything to apply it.
c'est honteux.
It is shameful.
And again, so much of the conversation that is actually being had between Ibrahim Traore and the Prime Minister of France, what I think about this moment right now is how powerful this is. It has been a very long time when we have seen an African president publicly platform himself to go back and forth with a former colonizer or current neo-colonizer or what have you, and I think it's really interesting that coming off of the cusp of the love that he got when he came to Ghana, I think it's really interesting how you see the very quick difference in how Western media is talking about Ibrahim Traore, which is one of the reasons why I want to keep talking about him. And I love that other African news stations and journalists and independent media personalities are talking about it, because for those of you who are on the Western side, you guys are seeing a lot of propaganda. Apparently, BBC also came out with a recent article where they tried to make a statement about the fact that Captain Traore was armed when he came to Ghana to congratulate the new president, John Mahama. I thought that was very interesting because on this side of the world, that conversation did happen, but for the most part, I feel like most people understand because he has had multiple assassination attempts. I believe like 18 and probably a little bit more. And so I think that the propaganda that is already starting against Captain Ibrahim Traore is really, really intentional. And I just hope that we make sure that we do not fall for that propaganda. So we are always going to hold African presidents accountable, and we are going to give credit where credit is due, okay? So for right now, that's all we're going to talk about with Burkina Faso, because I feel like there's always accomplishments. There have been new factories being built. There's new hospitals being built. And there are so many things that are happening. So right now, just know Burkina Faso is all good and Captain Traore has things under control. And one of the things that I do want to be able to explore also is understanding if the diaspora is invited into the country. I know that there are already diasporans in Burkina Faso, and I know that there have been attempts for citizenship conversations as well as investment conversations. But currently, when I go to the website, the U.S. Embassy website, as well as some other websites right now, Burkina Faso is considered a travel advisory, which, like as you can see in the screenshot, it says do not travel to. So I don't know I don't know what that actually means because I have not gone. I have seen journalists and YouTubers and content creators travel to Burkina Faso within the past month. And it seems pretty much kind of similar to Ghana. I'm just assuming because with the president being the current president and him getting his presidency through a coup d'etat, as well as his assassination attempts, as well as there being unruly situations obviously happening in more rural areas, I'm assuming that's why there's a travel advisory. So, like I said, I'm not necessarily saying go travel there like how people are doing with Ghana or Tanzania or Kenya. I'm not going to necessarily say that. Obviously, there are people that are doing that, but if you are interested in traveling to Burkina Faso, I would have to advise you to work with someone who has an expertise on that. If you are interested in getting travel consultations, especially for Africa, please, just understand that I can do that for Ghana and some other countries in East Africa, and I can connect you to different people and different resources. But when it comes to Burkina Faso, I have not traveled there yet, so I do not know. So, okay, let's move right along. So let's talk about Mali real quick. There have been a lot of different things that have been going on with Mali. Mali is a place that I really, really, really want to travel to because I really love the architecture. I think that the architecture is so nice, especially the indigenous mud house architecture. That's like my favorite architecture. So let's talk about Mali. Okay, so for those of you who also don't know, Mali is a part of the AES, which is the Alliance of Sahel States. So that is also in conjunction with Burkina Faso and Niger, and I believe Chad has recently joined. This is something that I thought was very, very interesting. Mali's government is working to rename 25 cities or locations in the country, and he's changing the names because they have French names. And so I'm really curious if he's going to change them to indigenous names or what that's going to necessarily look like. But there has also been like some type of argument with the citizens who feel like it's unnecessary, or they feel like there's a certain part of history that they don't want erased, that they may have now built some type of attachment to the French name or the French the French relationship that may have gone on in that particular area of the country. But I noticed that whenever I see different articles about Mali changing certain city names, it's always connected to the fact that the citizens, there are a large group of citizens who don't either care or don't think that it's important or think that there's other things that should be done. In other words, there are people that feel like it's performative, right? But this is something that I thought was very, very interesting. Mali begins its first shea butter processing factory. Mali's shea butter processing factory is the first of its kind within the Sahel states. So that's really dope. I think it's really dope that, and also Mali is another country like Burkina Faso whose current president received presidency through a coup d'etat as well. I really do think that that's interesting that these countries where they had a military coup are seemingly able to compete with these other countries that some will say have colonial puppets or dictators or people that they feel are tribalist in some type of way. I think this is really interesting that that Mali has not only a shea butter processing factory, but also has lithium factories and things like that. Because one of the things that I will say that a lot of African countries lack, like especially Ghana, there's not a lot of factories. There's not a lot of Ghanaian owned or African owned factories as much as you would think. And there are a lot of resources that each African country you would think that they own, but they do not own. When it comes to like cotton, and even when it comes to cocoa, when it comes to certain things, you'll be surprised who owns some of those things. So let's talk Air France. I mentioned it earlier. So I think that this is really interesting, and this is something people should really pay attention to, especially for people who are traveling by plane, whether you are in Africa or you are trying to come to Africa. So with Air France is caught in the middle right now because the AES, they are trying their hardest to create a non or decolonial Africa. And so with Air France has affiliates that are obviously connected to what would be considered colonial, settlers or descendants or partners or whatever the case may be. They are not African. And so there has been a halt on Air France planes being able to land at these airports. And so I think it's really interesting because Air France has obviously, suffered a huge loss because now all of those white French people, they don't have a way into the country unless they fly into another African country and then have to get to Burkina Faso via car and cross the border. It's been reported that Air France lost over 65 million euros. Now, let's talk about this really quick. I don't know, this isn't new news, but it's really interesting that France enforces for what is considered Francophone African countries to use the West African franc as in the currency that they use in those countries, in those African countries like Senegal, Mali, Togo, Benin, Burkina Faso. They make them use the franc, but in France, they don't use the franc. They use the euro. And that's one of the ways that neocolonialism happens. Controlling currency is 100% colonialism. And it's 100% of the reason that you continue to have a underdevelopment. Because why do these African countries have a white European currency and that white European country doesn't even use that currency? So apparently Air France is now trying to get back a deal with those countries in Africa. And it really makes you think. And Captain Ibrahim Traore said this in his speech, in one of his speeches. He said, when we had them here, they called us all these types of names. They said that, when you read their media, when they talk about Africa, they say it's so bad. They say these people are evil. They say these people are bad. But why, when we kick you out, you want to come back? That should really permeate through people's minds. If Africa was really this bad, if the resources were really this hard to find, if things were just so horrible, how come every time they have kicked you out, every time a war was won, how come every time there has been a campaign to get you guys out, you still continue to make deals to get your way back in with diplomatic immunity, diplomatic passports, and things like that? And the way that they creep back in is when they do things like build an airport, or bring their airplanes to your country, build a mining company, build a factory, bring, technology. They'll bring cars or car equipment. They will do things in their deals to make it seem like they're helping these African countries when really they're not. So I really want to leave on that statement too. And because as we watch ECOWAS and AES and we watch the different deals that they do, I know for most people in the diaspora, you guys are probably thinking why is this information important? Let me tell you why. Because when you leave America, that does not mean that when you get on a plane, you no longer have to worry about politics. You no longer have to worry about voting. You no longer have to worry about laws. No. When you come to this continent and when you come over here, there are so many things that you are going to be bombarded with in terms of politics, in terms of things to believe in terms of things to support. And you are going to be faced with a lot of different philosophical, political, social, cultural, economic choices. But yeah, that's it that we have for today. So until next time. Real quick, y'all, make sure you download my new ebook. It is a travel planner and journal. I made this about a year and a half ago, and it's really, really cool. There are 10 different entries. So as you are on your travel journeys, make sure you download this ebook. It's only $10, and you can get it on my website today at nakedgoldonline.com. You can download it, you can print it, whatever works for you. Make sure you cop that today.